Today, I welcome Gillian Behnke to the Positively Living podcast. I met Gillian when I was a guest on her Around the Campfire podcast. Our conversation flowed with such positivity and encouragement, I knew I needed to invite her to join us. I get so excited when I hear thoughts and ideas that make me nod emphatically and inspire me to add and build on them, making important connections and discoveries, which was pretty much our entire conversation on her podcast and this one today. On hers, I share my story of how I came to coaching and my perspective on decluttering and mom life, among other things. I will link to that episode and encourage you to listen to that one after this one. As a busy mom of two, Gillian cares deeply about helping other moms feel better, both mentally and physically. She believes that motherhood does not equal exhaustion and that it is possible to thrive mentally, emotionally, physically, and professionally. Gillian is the founder of Mom Camp, a media and events company that empowers moms to live their best lives. She is also the host of the Mom Camp Around the Campfire podcast. Gillian has worked in marketing and event management for over 15 years. She is a skilled problem solver, and her passion is connecting people with the right solutions that will improve their lives and work. Today, we focus on self-care, a topic near and dear to my heart. I have spoken about it many times on podcasts and summits and on social media, linking it to productivity and to energy management, which is more important, in my opinion, than time management. I believe in it so much, I created a free 2-page worksheet you can find on my website, positivelyproductive.com/library, called the Joy List, which prompts you to create your own self-care guide. I did that because it's such a personal topic and it needs to be customized to be effective. I think part of the reason is that self-care is yet another term that is not necessarily understood, though often used, and that's why I invited Gillian to talk about it. I like to talk about it in the context of living life as the best possible you. And keeping it real, when I say that, I feel like I'm reading it from a brochure, so I want to clarify. Showing up as the best possible you means something different to you than it does to me. But what I believe it means for all of us is showing up with our potential fully accessible, not dulled down by exhaustion and frustration. It means living intentionally and with a certain satisfaction in what we're doing. Gillian and I talk about her burnout story and the turning point that led her out of survival mode. She describes how the word simplify led her to make the changes she needed, which makes my heart sing. She describes how learning to ask why we do what we do, which is something we both love as questioners, was a key component to uncomplicating her life at work and at home. It's hard to pick a favorite takeaway for me, but if I had to, I would say it's that self-care can be so quick and so simple. Speaking of which, Gillian has a wonderful free worksheet as a gift for you. 40+ self-care ideas for working moms. She has it categorized by the time it takes to do each of these. So if you want something to do in, say, 5 minutes or less, she has a category for that. You can access that as well as a bonus day planner template on her website, the Mom Camp Life. That's all one word, momcamplife.com. You can also watch for her special Fill Your Bucket program on her website as well. Our conversation covers a lot of ground, but keeps coming back to making the right choices for you. I hope it inspires you to know that you can break free from burnout and survival mode. And the better care you take of you, the better you can take care of others. So if that matters to you, then self-care needs a place in your life as well. Be sure to email me to let me know which tip resonated the most and what you're doing to fill your bucket. You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome, Gillian Behnke, to the Positively Living podcast. I am so delighted to have you here. I cannot wait to get into this conversation with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am equally delighted. I love chatting with you when you are on my podcast, and I am super excited to get to talk to you again.
That's right. That's how we met. I was on Gillian's Mom Camp Around the Campfire podcast, and we had such an amazing conversation that selfishly I wanted to continue it. But most especially when I realized that your focus was on the mom life self-care combination that I just think is so crucial. So if you would please start by telling us in your own words a little bit about who you are, who you help, and really what makes you light up.
For sure. Okay, so I'm Gillian Behnke, and I am a mom of two, married mom of two. I work full-time in the events and marketing world. And about 2 years ago, I had the idea for a business called Mom Camp, a platform, a business, an event. I don't even know exactly how you describe or define what Mom Camp is, but basically I was nearing burnout myself and was starting to think, what do I need to do to recover and to reduce the overwhelm and the stress and all those pieces? And I had a bunch of tools that I had used in the past. And so I really started thinking, this actually is something, this needs to be something that I can do to help moms. Because what happened was I was actually driving to work. I was super stressed. And I was thinking, oh my God, I have all these things. We're 3 weeks from a major event. Our son is having major behavioral issues because school's about to end. And he's, it was pretty much right around this time of the year, 2 years ago. And I said, I just want to go into the woods and I want to, read some personal development, and I just want to, fill my own bucket, and I just want to be by myself and, recharge and reconnect and all these pieces. And there was like a light. I went, oh, Mom Camp, right? So I created this idea for this retreat. And then a couple months later, I was still trying to figure out what it was going to be and how it was going to be a thing when I'm working an exceptionally full-time job, mom to 2 kids, wife to an amazing husband, all those pieces. And then I realized that it wasn't about creating a place for moms to run away from their lives. It was about helping them create a life they don't want to run away from.
I love that so much. Yes, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
Because running away is only a temporary solution.
Well, that's it. And it's amazing. And the 2-night retreat we ran in November was phenomenal and transformational.
Right.
But it doesn't solve the problems long term. And so that's when I really started thinking about what does it take to create that life, and to just what are the simple shifts that are necessary that can have huge impact.
And essentially you're calling that self-care, right? I mean, is that what we're talking?
Yeah, self-care is a
big part of it.
Well, it actually goes deeper than self-care. Self-care is a huge part of it. But that's also a really broad term, because self-care can mean a massage or a candlelit bath, or it can mean going for a walk for 10 minutes just to clear your head and give yourself brain space where you don't have somebody saying, mom, 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 and obligations left, right, and center coming at you. So it really is such a personal term. You have to figure out what that means for yourself. But for me, it's also about really simple, healthy, foundational behaviors. So, and it's crazy, but these simple things have such a huge impact on your overall health and well-being, including mental health. So it's drinking water, it's prioritizing sleep, it's moving your body every day, and it's fueling your body with good nutrition. And that doesn't mean all the time. That doesn't mean 100% of the time, but that just means putting good food into your body, right? It does mean eating the vegetables,
Mom was right.
Right? Exactly. And we tell our kids, but it's true. And those 4 things really are what set those healthy foundations. And then the next piece is about setting priorities for yourself. And by that, I mean kind of your your core values,
Yeah.
like what's most important, what are your non-negotiables, what matters most to you. And that could be family, that could be health, that could be religion, that could be recognition and success and financial security. Like you have to know what it is for you, and then you have to figure out how to set the boundaries to protect those things.
Hmm.
So when I say recovery and filling your bucket and self-care, it's all of that. It's not just the candlelight bath, right?
Right. And that was one of the things I was hoping we would talk about a bit. So I'm so glad that you brought it up immediately. The phrase self-care, it's just it's
Yeah,
used so often, I think, to the point where we roll our eyes at it. We're like, great.
exactly.
Do not get me wrong. I love my pedicures, but, at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, but it's really more about how do you feel after, it's that energy
Yes.
management.
Yeah.
It's that bringing that light back into you, and nourishing
Yes.
yourself in so many different ways. Could we back up a little bit again? Tell me, you mentioned
Yeah.
water, sleep, and
Yes.
vegetables. What was the fourth?
And moving your body. Moving
Yeah.
your body. Yeah.
That's the thing I'm
So that
still
could be
working on.
walking.
Mhm,
Well, and that's for me, that's just like self-care, quote unquote.
mhm.
That for me, I work out every day. I follow workout programs. I like lifting weights, not crazy heavy, but that's a style of exercise that I like best. I like
Right.
feeling strong, right? But for somebody else, it might be a run. It might be a walk. It might be yoga. I try to love yoga. But I'm getting there. There are certain yoga routines I don't mind. But it's what you enjoy, because that's the
Yes.
thing you're going to stick with. If you find a workout program that everybody's like, I have never tried spin because I actually know I won't love spin. Like I know that, so it wouldn't be something that I would sustain. So you have to find kind of what your soulmate activity is. And then
Yes.
that's what you'll stick with.
Another way we're twinsies. I do not
Yeah.
love spin, but go ahead and ask me how I know. No, but
How
this
do you
is,
know?
yeah, exactly. Thank you for asking. I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I know because I tried. And yes, that's a key right there when you're like, I want to love it, and as soon as that
Yeah.
happens, then don't. Find something you do love. And
No.
you're hitting upon the most, I think, critical part of developing a habit that you can sustain.
Hmm.
And when you sustain it, it's that
Absolutely.
consistency that's going to give you what you need. So you talked
Hmm.
about those four basics, which I think are so important. And I'd love to get into the priority part. But before we
Hmm.
do that, let's talk a little bit about, so even self-care, even a broader term of really stepping away from that burnout. You had that aha moment and you're like, are these different things that
Hmm.
I can do to help? We're feeling that burnout. We're going down that road. What are we feeling, and how do we stop? How do we turn?
Yeah. So for me, we were doing this really massive work event in 2017.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until 2018 that I realized how burned out I was.
Yeah.
And I it I had to have some distance from it because work had slowed down a bit, and I had turned 2018 into the year of simplify. So I had made
Mm,
this a mantra for my team. I had made it because I knew we had been so overwhelmed for 2 years leading up to 2017. I knew 2018 had to be about simplification. So I gave myself that time to kind of step back, but it didn't actually connect personally for me until I had that distance. So it was taking that time and realizing, looking backwards. So it's hard when you're in it, but maybe you can look for the signs. Maybe this will resonate for somebody. But
mhm.
I was always impatient when I was at home. I was giving everything at work because there was so much pressure on me for so long, and so many obligations and so many expectations and moving needles on what was supposed to be the right thing. And I'm a people pleaser, so that was very challenging.
Mhm.
And so I would get home and I would have nothing left. I was impatient with my family. I had no capacity to pay attention to the people I love the most in this world. I would go to bed very early and just check out on my iPad in bed because I was doing what I call numbing behaviors.
Mm.
I was scrolling social. I was watching Netflix on hours on end. I just wanted to escape and numb out because I was so done at the end of the day. And that was not me giving the best of me to my family. And that when I realized that, that was really the critical, that catalyst of when I knew something had to change. And so that's what it looked like for me, was that impatience, that almost resentment, that just, you don't understand how hard this is for me conversation. And I wasn't asking for help. My husband was amazing and was helping, but I was checked out, and I wasn't the person I wanted to be at home. I was like performing like a, badass at work, but I wasn't the person I wanted to be at home. And ultimately that's where it's most important.
Right. And what you're talking about, whether it is in your life as a whole, or whether it's in a portion of your life, for your family or at work or whatever it happens to be, you're describing survival mode. And I think that's so important, because when you're surviving, you're not thriving, and you
100%.
are really trying to claw your way through, and it's not the best of you. And it's not only not good for those whom you love and want to be there for, but it's not good for you, because it's draining you in a way that you're already drained. And I think I love I don't love the phrase because I don't love it for someone, but I love it as a think about this one. If you feel yourself saying the words, I have nothing left to give, that's a huge red flag right there, to say, oh, wait, okay, why is that? And what do I need to turn that around? And I also think it's so important what you brought up about how it took some time. When you're right in the thick of it,
you're in survival mode. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And you're too close to the situation necessarily to be able to step back and to do something. So if you're listening and that's how you're feeling right now, our hearts are with you, and hang in there, and know that there can be change, that there can be a difference.
Absolutely.
And if you have stepped back a bit and you're still figuring this out, now's the time. I love what you did with the word of the year. And of course, me, simplify. It's like a magic word for me, right?
Exactly.
But that's the whole thing. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if you want to have habits that serve you, the simpler, the better. So, so but these things, they caught your attention. You're like, no, this is not how I want to live. This is not, And then you had the next year, you focused on simplifying things, which again, this is a bias on my part, but just because I'm biased doesn't mean I'm wrong. When you simplify, and when you, really take or allow and release things and allow things to go that you don't need, it opens the space to become more aware, right? And to make the choices, right?
It was transformative. It's interesting because it wasn't just like, it's not simplifying as in decluttering. I mean, that can be a part of it. Absolutely. But for where it made and I started it at work, and it translated into home, is where it made the most difference is, I call it the scheduling equivalent of a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
So because my team are performers, man, and they want to make things work. And again, team of people pleasers, so if somebody came to us and said, we want you to do this, they'd be like, okay, let's figure out a way. And then we'd be trying to figure out a way, and it would feel difficult, and it would feel too hard. And I'd say to them, why do we have to do this? First, and it's those questions, right? Do we have to do it at all? Do we have to do it, or can somebody else do it? Do we have to do it the way it's always been done? Is there a better way or a simpler way? Right. So I would literally, I called, because the year before, the crazy year, the hashtag for the year had been expected to change, because legitimately every day something would shift in a massive way where we'd have to pivot and expect it to change. And it became this rally cry. Right. So I would look at my team, and I would do that Saturday Night Live hashtag, finger action. And I would say hashtag simplify. And I'd say, why are we doing this? And it just gave them the permission to look at things a different way. And then I realized that could translate into home.
Mm.
So, all the volunteer commitments moms make at schools, all the running around, all the trying to get their kids to 8 different activities in the same day. And, they're enrolled in everything. Do the kids have to be enrolled in 3 sports? And maybe they do, and maybe they love it. And I'm not suggesting you take that away if that's something that really you love.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're feeling incredibly overwhelmed and you're mom taxi and you just have no time for you, maybe the kids could give up one of their activities, because you all need a little bit of space, and you should model that to your kids as well, right?
Absolutely.
My daughter, I call her my self-help guru. She was, I think, 7 when her bestie went away. Their family went away on a sabbatical for a year. And so they would just FaceTime.
Okay.
And her friend said, "Oh, when I get back, I'm signing up for hockey. Do you want to do it with me?" And I'm in the background saying, "Please no," because that's very early and very expensive. And so my daughter, she didn't see me. She didn't know I was watching.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "I don't think so, because I've already got a lot on my plate right now. And I would just really like some downtime."
Oh, that's amazing. Yes.
Oh, my babe.
That's hope for the future right there.
I know, right?
That is the discerning approach that we need to have to protect ourselves. She's already showing boundaries. That's brilliant.
Well, that's it. And we want our kids to have these opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, like, if I was talking to a mom who had a 2-year-old, right? Or even like anywhere from 0 to 2.
Yeah.
And they said, "What's the number one thing you can tell me?" I would say, give your kids some space. They don't have to be enrolled in everything. Let them try everything, but they don't have to follow through with every single thing. Like, if they start baseball, they don't also have to take on hockey and also take on soccer and also take on golf. And, they don't have to do it all. Some
Mm-hmm.
kids will love it, and that's awesome, but only if it works for your family as a whole.
Exactly.
Right? I'm not saying take away opportunities from your kids. And I always feel like a bit of a bee when I say these things, but it ultimately can be detrimental to your whole family when there's so much programming going on.
I fully agree. And I really do believe this is a form of decluttering. It's the kind of decluttering that I coach.
It's true.
And it's not about getting rid of things. It's not about saying you can't do this. It's about questioning, asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is this right for our family? Could you still get something out of it if you chose one sport per season, for example, as opposed to doubling up? You still get to. Is it maybe asking, well, you did this, but you really want to try something else? Then let's switch.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to switch, to change your mind. And I think the other thing that's so important is we're not saying don't do these things, but we're saying look for the signs. You talked about signs of mom burnout. What about child burnout? Because
absolutely,
they feel that pressure too of not being able to just sit and watch a favorite movie with you because you're running constantly, or what are you missing out on, when they do these things. So I think it's just so important to question it. And if you decide we are a hockey family and that's the end all be all, great,
for sure,
then you're honoring what's important to you.
Absolutely. If that brings you joy, 100%. But the other thing I think is really important is to demonstrate to your kids, well, that's great that you want to do all these things. Mommy and daddy, or mommy, who, like, we also need stuff.
Absolutely.
And we have priorities, and we have things that light us up for us, not just as a parent. And so some of our week is going to be committed to that as well.
Right.
Because I don't want my kids to think that the second I became a parent, it did all become about them, like, obviously, but it didn't all.
Don't tell them.
No, I know. But it didn't all become about them. I'm still a human first who has self-care needs and, exercise needs and like social needs and all those pieces. And I don't want them to see me completely giving up everything I was before or everything I need now,
And it's so true what you said about we're modeling for them. So
Yeah.
even if we struggle, even if we want it to be about them, or, that's the first thing we think of course, I
Hmm.
understand that's an incredible giving, selfless aspect of
Hmm.
being a parent, but
Absolutely.
we are also showing them how they will potentially be a parent or a caregiver of
Yeah.
some kind, and how they will be for the next generation. And so we need to think about that. I've often said this about my mom, one of the most incredible women I've ever known. And she was so honored for her selflessness. And I'm torn because I appreciate
Mm.
all that she did, but she did not model self care for me. I'm having to make
Right.
this choice now, and I'm showing my
Yeah.
children, and it's a bit different. And I think society gets a little bit, they go a little too far in terms of elevating the selfless giving mom who gives until there's nothing left to give.
Yeah.
And I would love to
Yeah.
change that and turn that around and change that conversation, because we can still
Absolutely.
give so much even when we're taking really good care of ourselves. We can give better, right?
We can give more. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I talk about filling your bucket all the time.
Yes.
And it's like you can't pour from an empty bucket. You have to pour into yourself before you can pour into others.
Right.
And it's so true. I mean, once you run dry, like I was a couple years ago,
Yeah.
I had nothing left to give, to bring back that phrase, right?
Right. Right.
So it just, you need to pour into yourself.
Yeah. And all the extracurricular activities in the world are not going to compensate
No,
for
no.
that deep contentment that you can have by taking care of yourself and
Yeah.
showing up in the best way possible.
You know, it's funny. I just realized there was another sign for me. This is very
Yeah,
personal, but maybe it'll connect for somebody.
please.
I shop,
Yeah.
I consume. When I'm feeling overwhelmed and
Hmm.
stressed, and there's something off and out of alignment for me,
Hmm.
I shop. I go on Amazon. I go on Old Navy. I go, I consume. And I now know this is a trigger for me. I know this is a sign for me. So
Hmm.
now as soon as I'm like going to the next tab and looking at the next thing, I think, oh, wait a second, something's off here. Why am I wanting all these things? You know? And
Yeah.
it's because I think that the next shiny object will be what's going to fix my problem. And what's fixing my problem is actually stepping away and taking some time for myself.
There you
Right.
go. Yeah.
And so it's just another sign that I've caught myself doing. Um, it's, yeah, it was very interesting when I actually realized that about like how I behave and what
Yeah.
my trigger warnings are, right?
Thank you for sharing that. I think so many people will resonate with that. And it definitely brings the clutter consumerism
Mm-hmm.
connection that I'm making with this idea of when we aren't fulfilled, when we're missing
Yeah.
something, then we're seeking other ways to fill it. So it's a combination. We're either seeking to fill it and we're going outward to fill it,
Mm-hmm.
or I think you said before, let me see, where my brain's trying to grab onto it, is this idea of numbing. That's it. And it's
Mm-hmm,
this
mm-hmm.
the coping mechanisms, and however you're
Exactly.
coping, and
Yeah.
whether that's coping as in ignoring the world and wanting to run away. And mind you, running away temporarily can absolutely be a good
Yeah.
technique, especially when s'mores are involved.
Exactly. But for perspective, right? Just to
Yes.
reconnect to yourself. It's funny, Glennon Doyle in Untamed, I'm still halfway through the audiobook, but she
Yeah.
has this line where she says, your problem is not going to be fixed by new countertops.
Yeah.
And that was how I was, right? Like I was like,
Sure.
this will fix my problem. If I just have this thing, this new sweater, I will feel so much better about myself. It's so, yeah, it's fascinating, really, the things we do to ourselves when
Yeah.
we're not facing and stepping away and taking the time to reconnect.
Yeah, it's the idea too of busy work can also be that as
Mhm.
well. Now, a lot of times it can be, the time vacuum of going on social media or scrolling or feeling like
Yeah,
we're doing something that is
right.
productive,
Look how
essentially.
productive I am.
Right, because I'm doing all these things
Right.
because we don't want to face the more challenging thing, or
Mhm.
whatever it happens to be. So, and I know that it is it's not the easiest thing in the world to go in and to address that, but I promise you it works. And so given that, when we start to practice it, and again, coming back to the things you talked about, some of the most basic, we can start so simply: water, sleep,
Yeah.
movement.
Well, I don't want it to be like another thing on your to-do list. Like that's
No.
something I wanted to say about self-care. The way it, like we roll our eyes at it, like you said, it it feels when you talk about self-care in that way, like it's another thing you have to do on your to-do list. And so it falls to the bottom of your priority list and it's something you don't do. But if it becomes as simple as taking 5 minutes for yourself, right? And it just becomes something like it's not on the to-do list. It's just stopping for a minute, putting the phone down and just being.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot of work to do this work, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to feel like a lot of work. It's not like you have to bring out a journal and write down the things that are bothering you and, you know, do all of these things. You can literally just take a 10-minute walk and just be. And the first day, no change might happen. You know, it might take a week of doing that before you start to have thoughts where you're like, I just got some huge clarity on something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't have to be overwhelming and huge,
Yeah.
but the impact can be huge over time.
Right. And that comes again from the habit and the consistency of it.
Yeah.
And also too, I really appreciate that you said it doesn't have to be another part of the to-do list, because
Yeah.
that's the last thing that we feel we need. We're in survival mode. We're feeling burnt out. It's like, oh, great, give me something else to do. And,
Exactly.
yes, you're right. It goes to the bottom, but this is where you have an opportunity to get creative. If you combine that true belief, I hope that you're hearing this in this conversation, that it does make a difference if you believe and then you get creative. For me, a nap. Always, because this will come
Mm-hmm.
about. Sometimes we'll be in big burnout. Sometimes we'll see the signs and things will be inching up. I know that while we're recording this, we are still dealing with huge impacts from COVID-19 and
Mm-hmm.
what that does to us as a society, and that overarching chronic stress that we're dealing with as a community, and trying to, it just deal with the change and the uncertainty.
It's a lot of coping.
Right? It's a lot of coping. And when it first happened and we needed to stay at home, I suddenly became so tired. And
Mm.
I honored that by napping more frequently. And I know
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we're always wanting to push further and say, well, is that productive? I promise you, this form
It's
of,
recovery.
yes, exactly. It's beyond self-care.
Yeah.
It's helping us, show up better. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
honored that. And even though it felt like, okay, there's so much more you need to be doing, but uh, you need to do this first. And so I just napped more frequently, and it subsided.
Yeah, well, your brain works better when you get the sleep you need, right?
Yes,
And
it's
napping, my husband knows there's something seriously going on if I can nap because I'm not a napper. I lie there and my brain is so busy that I simply can't. So if I can actually fall asleep, he's like, "Oh, okay, we have an issue."
yeah, I
You
get
know.
that. Good for him for
So
noticing that too.
yeah, exactly. And he lets me sleep because
Right.
it's obviously something's going on. But sleep is recovery and it's restoration,
Yes.
right? It's how you restore. And so if you're going to run on fumes if you're not honoring that in yourself. And so
Hmm.
then your brain won't be as effective, it won't be firing on all cylinders, and you
Hmm.
won't be as productive in the end. So,
It is a
ultimately
productivity
you're
tool.
serving yourself. Exactly.
Absolutely. But again, just being creative with this, whatever it is you need, sometimes it
Mhm.
is as simple as, I'm going to make this cup of coffee
Yes.
and I'm going to drink it while it is warm. And
Yes.
and something I want to mention in all of this, in the simplicity of it, is, and you touched upon this before, so I want to bring it up again. I think it's so important,
Mhm.
most especially for moms, is engaging the family with this and saying, this is what I need. I need 10 minutes where,
Yes.
unless you're bleeding profusely and there's nobody else who can
Yeah.
offer a bandage.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I need these.
Mommy
And
needs 10 minutes.
right. And again, you're talking about 10 minutes. Now, eventually
Yeah.
you can build it up to longer. It depends on the age of your children, the understanding,
Mhm.
the availability of different caregivers in the family and things like that. But even starting with, we have lunch and then I need 10 minutes alone. And then
Yeah.
after that we do something. And it's that alternating and helping them understand that there are going to be
Well, and
certain things that
modeling
you
to
need.
them.
Exactly.
It's funny. We've actually tried to reframe timeouts
Hmm.
so that it's not a punishment. It's time away to just get out of the situation
Yes.
and distance and just take a moment.
I like that.
Right? Because we need to separate right now. We need to just take a moment. And so being able to say, mommy needs a timeout without being punitive, right? With
Yeah.
it just like, I actually just need a couple minutes and I'm
Yeah.
going to be okay. And it's totally fine. I just would like some space. I call it brain space, because that's what I was so desperate for back then, was brain space, where I wasn't thinking for work. I wasn't thinking for family. I was literally just thinking for me and maybe not even thinking,
Right.
so
Yes.
just being,
Just being.
despite my inability to make meditation a habit, I just knew that I needed that space.
Right. And I think that we can be in a space that has meditative qualities. If we go quiet,
Totally.
if we go for a walk, I think there are many different ways. Dan Harris has the 10%, is it 10% happier, I believe, and his podcast. And
Mm,
he's got a lot of tips for people who want to meditate, who are not like
yeah.
into meditation, so to speak, or struggle
Awesome.
with that idea. So for anyone feeling what Gillian feels, I highly recommend looking into that. But yeah, is there anything else that I didn't ask you about this that you'd love to mention to encourage others? Did I miss anything?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've taken us on so many tangents. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, I don't think of them as tangents, but as in little guideposts for what we're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
things that we can try. Yes, there's a lot to this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the takeaway. There is a lot to it, but it doesn't have to be complicated to make it work for you.
Yeah. Well, and you just said a really important word, is try,
Yeah.
because there is no right way to do this. And all you can find is what's right for you. And you will only find that by trying and finding that it doesn't work.
Hmm.
I don't love the word failure in any way, shape, or form, work wise or anything, because I always feel it's just a way that didn't work. And if the goal is still that important to you, you will find a different way to make it happen. And so if a walk doesn't work for you, fine. If you hate meditation, fine. Like, try things. Just find what works for you to give yourself that brain space
Hmm.
and do that, right? It's going to be
Yes.
different for everybody.
It will, and it's not about the only time you could consider it failing, it just because it isn't, is
Yeah.
that you are using an outward source or an outward,
Right.
guide to compare yourself, and that does you
Yeah.
no good. Yes, it's about finding what works for you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Good. Now's the perfect time to go into what I like to call the rapid wrap up and have a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit
a
of
bit
fun.
nervous about this.
Oh, no, this is fun. So, the first thing we're going to ask, let's have some fun. The song that always makes me dance is.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm just going to tell you the first thing that came to mind, because,
Yeah,
and this is ridiculous.
sweet. Because
It's
I'll make a
Hampton the
playlist.
Hamster.
Ah,
Hampton the Hamster.
yes.
I don't know why, but that just, because there is something about that song that is ridiculous but makes me smile.
There you go.
And there, almost every song like that's upbeat makes me dance. Like
Yep.
I love it. Kitchen dance parties are a thing.
Yep.
But everybody used to stare at me because Hampton the Hamster would come on and be like, and I would like literally just get this huge smile and just do some silly little jig. So
That's perfect. That makes me
weird
snort
answer,
laugh.
but
Yeah,
there you
no,
go.
no. There are no weird answers. There are no wrong answers here. No, this is fabulous. Somebody somewhere is going to be putting that back on their playlist. So I think it's fabulous. Okay. The quote or mantra that I share or use most often is?
Better done than perfect.
Yes, better done than
Mm-hmm.
perfect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest life lessons came from, this could be a person or an event.
I would say the overwhelm that I experienced and the importance of taking care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
now here you are
Mhm.
offering this encouragement to others. And lastly, what or whom are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
that's not a pat answer. That's not just a gimme, but being exposed to so many new people and amazing moms through my podcast, I get to meet really incredible people and make connections. And I am so grateful that I got to meet you and that we made a connection and had such a great chat and that we're able to chat again. I know we said if we were closer, we would be going for coffee all the time.
Totally.
So, I'm very, very grateful for you.
Thank you. I feel the same way. And that's why I wanted you on the Positively Living podcast and to share you with everyone because they need to hear this. And if you could see her smile, but you will when you see her photo in the show notes. But do you have something you want to share with the listeners and where we can find you online?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So first up, my website is momcamplife.com.
Okay.
And that is also Mom Camp Life is my handle on Instagram and Facebook and the very underutilized Twitter. So don't even bother following me on Twitter. But Instagram and Facebook at Mom Camp Life. And I will be relaunching the Fill Your Bucket method. That is a method that incorporates those healthy foundations. It will be, it has the prioritization and the boundary setting and all of those pieces in early August. So I would absolutely love it if people came and checked it out. And there are a number of freebies on my website, but one I am very excited about right now. Actually, I'll tell you about two because I'm very excited about both of them. The first one is specifically focused on working moms, and it's about self-care, and it's got over 40 ideas for self-care, but broken down by the time it could take to do them.
Love that.
So there's 5 minutes or less, there's 10 minutes, there's, if you have 30 minutes, they're all broken down, and it could be just lying on the ground and putting your legs up on the wall for 5 minutes. It could be doing 5 sun salutations, right? It could be anything like that. It could be reading a chapter of a book. It's ideas to just get you started and demonstrate that it isn't hard to find something that works for you to just take that time. So that will be on my website when this comes out for sure as a free download. Wonderful. And then the other one I'm very excited about is a planner. It's just a template for a day planner. I'm a planner obsessed person. I love planners, and I've been on the hunt for the perfect one that is a perfect balance of planning my day and my health goals and gratitude and all the things that I have actually found that make a difference in my life. So I've designed a template. So that will also be on my website by the time this comes out as a free download. So they'll all be really easy to find on momcamplife.com.
Great. And I love both of those so much because they speak to that simplicity that is so important and so much of what we need to be able to do something that's quick and easy, that's combined, that's efficient in order to live better. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Well, and thank you for shining your light in this world and for sharing it with us. I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on.
When you say yes to others, make sure you're not saying no to yourself. Paulo Coelho. Thank you for joining me on the Positively Living podcast. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you'd like more information on today's show, you can find a link to the show notes on positivelyproductive.com/podcast. If you found value in this show, please click subscribe, and even better, give a quick review on iTunes. It supports me and will help others find the show. If you'd like more positive content, come join me on social media. Positively Productive on Facebook and positively_Lisa on Instagram. Get ready for kids, cats, and all my quirky humor over there. I look forward to having you join me next episode. Until then, keep it positive and keep making space for what matters most.